Welcome to a very special Collision Conference edition of the Voice of Retail podcast. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, and this podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Described by some as the Tiff for tech, Collision is Irishman Paddy Cosgrave's great import into Toronto for the first of a 3-year run. This North American tech conference outgrew its New Orleans home and welcome as visa access for its many international guests became harder to come by, and after Paddy visited Toronto and began to appreciate the burgeoning tech scene and welcoming environment. So over a couple of days, I joined 25,711 attendees from 125 countries, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Houseplant retail cannabis brand creator Seth Rogen, and the always amazing Kara Swisher, plus many, many more. I put this special edition episode together featuring interviews and highlights for the week, starting with Sarah Landstreet, founder and CEO of Georgette Packaging, the day after she crushed her main stage 2-minute pitch on opening night, talking to us about next-generation packaging processes, engineering, and materials. Next, offsite, I chat with Pat Breen, Irish Minister for Trade, Business and Employment, EU Digital Single Market, and Data Protection, who is visiting on a trade mission this week promoting Irish tech and merchandise. We met at the Irish Design House in Toronto, hosted by wonderful owner Sinead Clark. Stay tuned, by the way, for an upcoming episode of The Voice of Retail for a feature interview with Sinead. Last but certainly not least, I chat with Hassan Murad, founder Intuitive AI for Zero Waste, on his innovative AI-powered recycling sorting solution, Oscar, that visually scans the items that you're about to dispose of and tells you what goes where. I'm also joined with commentary interspersed between the interviews by two fellow Collision attendees, visionary tech leader Chris Hodgson, founder of The Pivot, and Lisa Charters, a longtime digital maven in the entertainment, content, and business advisory practice field, with their commentary and observations on the show. So let's get started with my interview with Sarah Landstreet.
Sarah, welcome to The Voice of Retail. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I had the opportunity to see you up on the stage very, very briefly, but a great short presentation. Got me really interested in Georgette Packaging at Collision. This is my special edition for Collision. So first of all, before we start talking about your Georgette Packaging and what makes it different, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey. McGill, Mech Engineering, Ivy MBA, time in Haiti, quite a rich background. But tell us your journey and how you got to starting Georgette Packaging.
Sure. So, I started, as you said, as an engineer. I was actually really interested in, and still am in, civilian aircraft, which is what got me into engineering to begin with. But I'm also interested in sustainability, so that's always been a bit of a contradictory interest. So I went to McGill and then graduated and was really interested in moving to one of the great cities of the world. So I moved to London, England, and started working as a sustainability engineer there. There's a lot more going on in the UK and Europe, especially around sustainability compared to Canada at the time. This was 2007. And then I decided to leave engineering and start a business. So I moved to Northern Ireland and launched the first cupcake bakery there. And this was inspired by, there were so many bakeries that were opening up in London around American baking and cupcakes and brownies. It was like cupcakes were sort of taking the UK by storm. So I thought it was an interesting trend, and trends hit a little bit later in Northern Ireland. So it was a less competitive environment. So, but yeah, that's kind of what originally got me exposed to, what it takes to build a consumer brand and how people think about brands and their relationships with them, and how a small business really establishes itself and grows its name and reputation. So I ran that business for 3 years and sold it in 2011, and then came back to do my MBA and get a bit more of a formal understanding of business. And then was looking for a problem within my industry that not everyone would know about or be working on. I really like kind of unsexy problems and old school industries that are ripe for some newness in them. So I became really interested in packaging and packaging manufacturing, and how tricky it is for people who need branded packaging to actually find it, buy it, design it, and just understand how it fits into their business and its success. So
and this feels like the triangulation of a bunch of things, right? So there's a lot of engineering that goes into packaging, and also you mentioned sustainability, and it's certainly a hot topic in the packaging industry now. So tell us what makes your approach to packaging a bit different. I was on your site. You can order packaging. What's different about your proposal, and why would an organization like Y Combinator be so interested in your business, other than your obviously strong background?
Yeah, so the way we function is we broker a relationship between businesses that are growing and are very design savvy, becoming more and more social media savvy, and just looking to connect super strongly with their customers, and not just be like, oh, this is a nice, coffee shop, but like, this is the place that you go to, and every touch point is an interaction with that brand, and strengthens the relationship. So we work with them, and then on the other side, factories that are generally focused on very large businesses, and they might have like, a dozen or a couple of dozen really major clients that they work with. And this isn't really a major target of theirs. And so I think that we're a very good bridge between the two, because we understand what it takes to, build a food or beverage or consumer business, what goes into it and what matters to them, and then also how to filter and translate all of that information into the factory and picking the correct factory. Like it's a very technical buy, and then and one that most businesses, if they are buying packaging, they do it maybe once or twice a year. They're not doing it continuously, so you generally wouldn't have a team that are experts in this. Even if you are quite a large company, even if you're doing $50 or $100 million in sales, it is still like an occasional buy. So we try to bring all of that expertise and knowledge, and if we're working with, if you own a donut shop and we're working with loads of donut shops, like we have kind of an integrated understanding of those businesses that would be hard for you to access otherwise. So I think our expertise in food and beverage has really helped us to be valuable to the brands that we work with. And then, of course, there's the whole sustainability side, which is around, okay, like packaging is a big part of business right now. It is gradually being phased out, and things are changing. And so how do we, get a grip on that change and plan for it, and think about where we're at right now and how to transition, basically. So how to demonstrate as a business that you are lessening your own impact, that you're planning for the future, that you're, the values that you espouse in other areas of your business extend to your packaging and the environment as well. I think consumers care more and more about that and are becoming aware and are asking questions of the businesses that they buy from.
It's an interesting model, because typically, and I've actually worked in that business. I work for Dixie Cup, of all things.
Oh, no way.
Cup, and so I'm quite familiar with the hoop strength and all the kind of different things that go into packaging and cups at scale. It tends to be a business of scale, right? And so it's intriguing that you would have a business to be able to offer those smaller orders, single chains, small chains, the same kind of innovation. So I guess, is that part of your secret sauce, is that you can offer those bespoke retailers of any type a packaging that lives up to their brand without killing their bottom line, I guess.
Yeah, so I think you're right. A lot of factories, it's tricky for them to scale up and scale down, or to work well with different sizes of business. And so that is a big part of what we do, is figuring out, what is the right pairing, essentially, in terms of a factory that, won't just fit that order in and really it'll slow them down, but it's right in the sweet spot that they like to operate. So, and it's there's two sides to it in manufacturing. There's the actual physical processing of your order, but there's also the business side to it. It's like, how long does it take to quote this? Like, that sounds like it wouldn't be complicated or time intensive, but packaging is very complex. And so quoting it and understanding enough about the parameters and what kind of budget you're working with, like, that allows us to triage and to guide the conversation long before we need to get an estimation team to work on something for, a couple of days or a couple of weeks, which it can actually take. So, yeah.
Let's talk about your journey. I'm intrigued by your journey that found you on the stage at a major conference like Collision on opening night. So tell me about how that came to pass, and how do you get in front of someone like Y Combinator that really gets probably a lot of opportunity to see a lot of businesses. What was your journey there in terms of this kind of level of interest and exposure?
Well, I think I guess I don't I can only surmise exactly what someone like Y Combinator would see in us, but what they've told me certainly is I think that they know that there are businesses that, as I mentioned, that are not going away. This is a massive, massive business that is off a lot of people's radar. It's worth about 1.2% of GDP, about half the size of the mining industry. And given its size and its presence in everybody's lives, there isn't the amount of innovation and attention that you might think. There's a lot around the machinery itself, but around how our relationship with packaging evolves, how we purchase it, how we source it. There's a lot of potential there, and so I think that it's kind of an unusual story in that way. And I think that folks like Y Combinator see opportunity there, and it's okay, great. Let's see what we can do to help the people who are at the beginning of what looks like it'll be a tide of change.
Last question for you, and thanks for spending some time with us. One of the things we're looking at, I know retailers are looking at closely as e-commerce continues to be a bigger part of the retail, depending on what kind of retail, is e-commerce dedicated designed packages. And you're starting to see those come out in areas like health and beauty and packaged goods, the Tide package that's actually designed to be shipped in e-commerce versus designed to go on a shelf. Are you starting to think about that kind? You mentioned this disruption or innovation in packaging. That feels like one of those elements, along with sustainability and innovation, that is happening. Have you heard any thoughts about or heard any rumblings about that in your world?
I think that what we've seen is probably less around. I think a lot of what people expect when they think of innovation in packaging is around the specific materials that are changing, and I think that's something that major CPG brands would focus on more. The kind of shift that I see, and that I think is really interesting to e-commerce, is to treat that as part of their product and to communicate to their customer about their packaging and why it's there and what it's doing and how to dispose of it afterwards, in the same way that you would think of the product itself and be interested in its origin story and how you're going to be interacting with it. So I think that it's a wonderful tool for communication, and of course it's useful because it gets the product there safely. Right. But I love the flow of information that is coming, and how people are using their packaging really, really cleverly to work for their brand and help it and be a very, very, very useful tool, and not just something that holds and ships, basically.
Well, thanks. Congratulations on your success, and thanks for spending time with us, and enjoy the rest of Collision.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michael.
Hello, my name is Chris Hodgson. I'm the founder of The Pivot. The Pivot helps companies solve their business problems by piloting innovative solutions that have already been built by the world's best startups. Just finished attending the first 2 days of Collision, and wanted to give a quick update on my thoughts so far. I think this has been a fantastic event. I think it's really established Canada as an innovation center, and it's provided us with credibility. Historically, we've talked within Canada about the trends and the moment we're having around disruption and digital innovation. I think this conference has brought the world stage to Canada to see firsthand what's going on, and really highlighted that to the rest of the world. I think I've been really impressed with a number of things. One, just the general organization. This is a massive conference with a lot of attendees. I think I heard 20,000 attendees. both the location and the old C&E grounds at the Intercare Centre, as well as the whole registration process and the app they've built to manage the very extensive agenda, I think was incredibly well done and very smoothly run. They've obviously got a lot of experience with this and made it much easier than I've experienced in the past at large conferences such as this. The breadth of speakers was unbelievably impressive. Everyone from the Prime Minister, the Premier of Ontario, the Mayor, all the way down to very early stage seed companies and hundreds of those companies. Everyone within the ecosystem of innovation was in attendance, both from the government level, corporations, venture capital, and finance and funding, as well as startups themselves, as well as the whole creative ecosystem and creative space. So really a great networking opportunity, a great way to bring that innovation community together, not just in Canada, as I said, but from people all over the world. Highlights for me, just being able to catch up with old friends in this industry and being able to meet new contacts who are passionate and care about innovation and digital disruption. I was also really impressed with the keynote from Dan Doctoroff, the CEO of Sidewalk Labs. Obviously a contentious topic within the Toronto marketplace these days. I think he did an amazing job of really outlining their vision and the opportunities that exist for Sidewalk to have a massive impact on the Toronto area in terms of thinking about cities and how cities can be built. And I think, to be honest, they don't have all the answers to everything, and I think he was quite open about that. I think we've perhaps been a bit harsh in Toronto and criticizing the opportunities when really that land has stood empty for decades without any Canadian company stepping up to do anything near to what they're proposing can be done there. And so really I think he did a great job of outlining the vision for that. We'll wait and see where it lands once they put a full proposal together, it sounds like in a month. One of the lowlights for me, if I were to have any, I suppose, is today I spent about 10 minutes or 15 minutes walking through a personal use of augmented reality through a company called Magic Leap. For those of you that know Magic Leap, it was in secret mode for years, raised something ridiculous like $2.5 billion they have actually raised to develop an augmented reality glass system. So these are goggles or glasses that you wear and interact with things differently. I spent time, they had 3 experiences there. One was a retail experience, which I spent time in, allowing you to visualize an image on a t-shirt and then have the shirt created. It was sponsored or done in partnership with H&M, who is obviously trying to understand where the opportunity lies within retail and augmented reality. Obviously something that has been hyped up as much as Magic Leap and raised that much funding would be hard to meet expectations. But I really was underwhelmed by the whole experience. They highlighted that Magic Leap, or sort of augmented reality through goggles and glasses, would be the next phase in 2020s beyond sort of the 2010 phase of tablets. I actually think the tablet experience for what they did would have been much better and much superior to what I experienced with the goggles. Obviously, technology improves, and I'm generally an optimist about the future. But I really think the use case they had for this, in simply looking at a t-shirt hanging on a hanger and picking some colors in front of it that then get printed on the t-shirt later, really wasn't the best use case for augmented reality, and I think really is quite underwhelming, especially considering how much money has been spent on developing this technology. So that's it for me from Collision. Hope you can attend next year. It's a fantastic event, and I'd really encourage it for anyone who's interested in disruptive innovation.
Well, Minister, welcome to Toronto and welcome to the Voice of Retail. How are you today?
Very well, Michael. I'm delighted to be in Toronto it's a short visit, unfortunately. I think I'm only here about 48 hours, but we're doing a lot in that 48 hours, accompanied by Mr. Jim Kelly, His Excellency the Ambassador of Ireland to Canada, and with Enterprise Ireland officials. And it's a trade mission. We're promoting Ireland, and of course that's really important to us. And it's really great to be here in this store. To see some of the magical items created in Ireland for sale in downtown Toronto.
Well, when you walked in, you felt like you were back home for a minute. It must have been a bit of a paradigm switch.
I felt I was back in County Clare, where I live, in Bunratty, which is visited by many Canadian tourists, and it was great. And I'm very proud to see our Irish diaspora and Sinead working here in Canada, showcasing what some of the best of SMEs in the area of craftsmanship and clothes, and what we create, Irish products. It's great to have it in downtown Toronto. And it's Irish Canadian connection is very strong. And
made even more so with a great trade agreement in place between our
very much
our
so. And I was just thinking on my way out on the Aer Lingus flight, and the first flight between Newfoundland in Canada and Clifton was made by Alcott and Brown 100 years next month.
Wow.
So that connectivity continues today with direct flights from both Air Canada and Aer Lingus into Ireland. And those direct flights are really important from all over Canada, particularly for tourism and for people to see for themselves what Ireland has to offer. Not just the great city of Dublin, our capital city, which is steeped in history, but the whole west coast of Ireland, right down from Donegal along the Wild Atlantic Way, right down to West Cork. And of course, Sinead comes from County Cavan, and County Cavan brings its own uniqueness as well. There's a famous song called Come Back Paddy Riley to Ballygene Stuff, and made famous by one of our great composers, Percy French.
Right.
And so it's great to see so many of Irish diaspora doing so well in Toronto. 1 in every 8 claim Irish connectivity here in Canada. It's about 14% of the population. It's a very high percentage.
Sure.
So I think having that diaspora here, I suppose, is part of the reason we're here. First of all, to connect with the Ireland, and as you rightly pointed out, to increase our trade between our two countries. And part of my trade mission has been in relation to technology, in relation to the construction sector, but also it's great to come here and to see what Irish products are available here in Toronto, particularly some of our native costumes and dresses, our iron sweaters, waistcoats, tweed waistcoats, which are very popular now, and of course Sinead's own brand, Fada, where she designs her own clothes here in this shop.
So let's talk about government and public policy first for a second. Let's step into your role. I was listening to an interview this morning that talked about this concept of a flywheel. And it's author Jim Collins, Good to Great. And he talks about this flywheel where organizations build one thing that leads to another thing, that leads to another thing, that builds a unstoppable momentum. And it feels like whether it's Enterprise Ireland or the Irish government has built such a flywheel around the work that you do to propel Irish businesses globally. Is that how you see it? And what are those elements of that flywheel?
I suppose, look, there's lots of parts and elements to the flywheel. First of all, I think our Irish diaspora play a very important role in that flywheel. And, they are ambassadors all the time for us in Canada. I think that's important. Our embassies, they're no longer the traditional role that embassies had in the past. They play a very important role in trade, working with our agencies here, like Enterprise Ireland, who have been here for many years, promoting Irish Indigenous companies in Canada. And thankfully, today now we have the IDA, which is the Enterprise Development Industrial Development Association. They promote foreign direct investment into the country. So they have a presence here as well now, a permanent presence. And working in conjunction, collaborating with the Irish Embassy, I think we can achieve a lot together. particularly in relation to trade. There's nearly €4 billion worth of trade between our two countries, and I think that can increase as a result of CETA.
Well, I was looking at some statistics on the Canadian site around the CETA site, and trade is certainly on the rise between our two countries. It's a great thing to see. It's good economics for both of us.
Well, I think CETA is as important for Canada as it is for Europe. We're living in very undocumented times at the moment, difficult, challenging times. A lot of trade wars ongoing between different continents and countries. And I suppose for a country like Canada that's embedded in North America, where 75% of its exports go into the US, it's important for Canada to look at other destinations, particularly when trade deals have been negotiated. And this is an opportunity now for Canada to do business with Europe. And in Ireland in particular, because of that close connectivity, I think that's something we can work together with. We've had nearly 18 or 19 ministerial visits here over the last 3 years. I think that will continue. I think we'll see more trade missions here.
It's a big element of the flywheel, right? Your presence.
It is.
It's not just in Canada, I'm sure, but around the world.
You know yourself, in St. Patrick's Day, the world goes Irish. Embassy Ireland here in Ottawa organise events all over Canada. And of course, we've increased our footprint now in Canada with a Consul General's office in Vancouver, so as to ensure that the Irish, name and the brand will continue, because Canada is a big country, 36 million population. And as with 14% of the population claiming Irish descendancy, I think that's really a strong picture and a message out there in relation to the relationship we have with Canada. And this is why we are organising trade missions on an ongoing basis. We had one last year. I think we'll have another one maybe later on this year again, to ensure that the Irish companies, who are very strong performers out there on the global stage in the various different sectors, can be part of Canada, sell into Canada. And I mean, trade is a two-way process. Yeah. And I mean, obviously it's for the betterment of a company that if you take on an Irish company, like we had a number of Irish companies today, I can't mention their names because they haven't the deals done at this stage, but one of them is a banking corporation and they're using an Irish company in the area of cybersecurity. I think, when you see a company like that in Canada, big banking corporation taking on an Irish company, I think that's really good. And it's just part of what the Irish companies can do out there. The Irish companies are very innovative. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in Ireland.
Let's talk about that for a sec. So last night I had the opportunity to see our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talk about what makes Canada different or what makes Canada successful in building its technology. So I think there's lessons to be learned from Ireland. What's that secret sauce that has made Irish companies so progressive?
Very much, I suppose, the fact that we have a very young population, the youngest actually in Europe. And, today I got really good news from the government this morning to see that our unemployment rate is down to 4.6%. One of the areas which we encourage all the time as a minister in the Department of Business, Enterprise and Innovation is the whole area of innovation and entrepreneurship. And this is where we work closely with third level institutions. We work with other areas, with multinational companies. We work with the indigenous companies to ensure that we promote entrepreneurship so that people can start off their own companies.
And that was one of your past portfolios, right? You had the small business
portfolio, yeah. And 98% of enterprises in Ireland are made up of SMEs that imply about 70% of the population. Right. And foreign direct investment doesn't come into every part of Ireland. It tends to go into clusters in the large urban areas.
Sure. I saw a lot of cranes in Dublin when I was driving.
I think there's about 50, the last count of 50 cranes in Dublin. Not as many in the other regions. And I suppose this is something that we are very conscious of as a government to ensure that the regions develop as well. And of course, tourism is very important to the regions. I mentioned the Wild Atlantic Way a few minutes ago. And it's products like that Sinead is selling here in her shop here in Toronto. We have lots of these craft shops as well throughout the Wild Atlantic Way and throughout Ireland in the beautiful tourist spots. That's these shops and these craft centres are really important because they create employment in the regions. So that they're important.
And they create a vibrancy in the neighbourhood.
Create a vibrancy as well. I think Sinead is a great story. Yeah. A girl that came out here just maybe for a short holiday and a break, and herself and her partner decided to stay here. And I think that's a great story to hear about the welcome that they got from the Canadian people, and how that she can sell Irish products here to Canadian people. And I think that's great to have that type of facility, that type of shop here for Canadians to do their shopping locally. You might buy when they're in Ireland, they might buy a product, but they wear down Ganseys, so you have to buy a new one. So you come back to Sinead if you want to to replace that jersey or Gansey.
Well, let's talk about advice for retailers in Canada. So what ways can retailers look to Ireland to explore the new products that they can bring over and retail here? And I want to dovetail that into this St. Patrick's Day that you mentioned before. Such a phenomenon. I know in the U.S., networks like QVC have a St. Patrick's Day. It's been a phenomenal success. How do retailers in Canada think about taking advantage of that momentum that you're creating in the flywheel?
Well, I think retailers in Canada can avail of these products by anybody that wants to get involved, obviously, in this area. I mean, a lot of work has been done now online, as you know, online shopping, etc. as well. But there's still a lot of people out there that like to physically touch that garment, to come into the garment. When I came in here today to Sinead's store, the first thing I smelled was the lovely perfume, the perfume of the soaps. And again, soap is a very big Irish product at the moment. And I think by talking to Enterprise Ireland here, talking to the agency here, is something that can help retailers as well. I'm sure Embassy Ireland in Ottawa will help, and Jim and the team that will help anybody that's interested in being part of Ireland and being part of, I suppose, that old world of Ireland that we living, even though we're in a very modern society. Sinead will probably tell you herself that a few years ago an iron jersey was something I would never wear, but now it's back in fashion again. Tweed waistcoats, likewise as well. You'd never wear them one time. My grandfather would wear them, but now they're very much back in fashion again. And I think a lot of that has happened because our President Michael D. Higgins, bought a Donegal tweed suit. And so suddenly it became fashionable again to wear Irish tweed.
Irish's most important influencer, other than Peaky Blinders, I guess. The two seem to be influencing very well.
Yeah, and you often see the likes of Liam Neeson and Hollywood stars that as well, wearing Irish design products. And I think that's, again, these are all great ambassadors for Ireland. And it's by having a permanent presence here, like in Sinead's shop, that has, that showcase some of the best products we have in Ireland. Take, for instance, I fitted on a cap a few minutes ago there from Hannah's hats in Donegal in Northern Ireland. They're one of our largest, great companies that make caps and have been doing so for many generations. I think Mr. Hannah himself, the grandfather, made caps. This tradition has been carried on to the next generation, and that happens in a lot of the craft shops we have. The next generation carry on that craft, whether it's in making hats or iron sweaters and or all that. But what's important is that they are genuine Irish products. I think Sinead would agree with me as well on that. We have a lot of copies coming into Ireland now, and I think that's a shame. Made in China or made where else, or Japan or somewhere, and with an Irish name in it. What's really important for us as a country is that the products that are for sale both in Ireland and here in Toronto are genuine Irish products, genuine Irish crafts.
The authenticity.
Made in Ireland. That's part of Ireland. And I think that's really important for us to find out. And that's why we promote the whole buy Irish products, and we promote Irish companies. Why? Because they're creating jobs at local level.
Right. And then take that economic wealth and spread it across the country, not just centralise it in different.
Well, that's important for us as a government to ensure that the regions develop as well.
Important for Canada. I mean, there's a lot of parallels between our two nations from that perspective, right? There's a lot of big centres of commerce, but how does the entire...
Well, I think every government needs a policy to ensure that the regions grow as well as the large urban areas. It's not easy, particularly if you're looking at foreign direct investment into a country, because a lot of them want to locate in clusters where there's universities where there's hotels, facilities, etc., and I suppose urban or having housing available as well. But there's one thing I suppose that's really important for the regions and for rural Ireland is the quality of life. Now that Ireland is going ahead with broadband to penetrate the regions of Ireland, people can work from a distance. They can work from home. I think that's really good for families. It's really good to sustain rural villages and towns as well. That's where you have a lot of these art craft shops as well located in these regional areas, and that's very important.
Well, Minister, thank you so much for spending some time. Welcome again to Toronto. I hope your travels are safe and you enjoy the rest of your time here. And thank you for being on the Voice of Retail podcast.
Well, listen, I'm delighted to be here in Toronto, and I'm delighted to be here, I suppose, in another part of Ireland in Sinead's store. And I would encourage many of your listeners as possible to ensure you get up to the store and look at the fantastic Irish products that she's stocking here, and some of her own designer goods as well. Sinead is a great ambassador for Ireland, and I hope that she continues to grow her business here in Toronto. And of course, as a country, we hope that we can continue to grow our exports into Canada as well, and to continue the great tradition of the past. Canada was really good to Ireland down through the years in difficult times for Ireland. A lot of your countrymen helped us out in difficult times. In fact, the Jenny Johnson famine ship was built in Toronto. There's a replica of that ship now in Dublin.
I had no idea.
And of course, yeah, indeed, it was built here in Canada, and that was a very difficult period for Ireland as well back in the 19th century. So thank you for being here, Michael, and best of luck with your podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hello, this is Lisa Charter speaking. I'm a digital solutionist, and I attended the Collision conference here in Toronto today. I saw an interesting presentation from a Toronto-based startup that's now 5 years old. The startup is called Ritual, and they are an app that helps people order from restaurants in advance and just go and pick it up quickly. This eliminates the lineups that people have when they are quickly trying to have lunch. The Ritual app has been around for about 5 years, but only advanced in the last couple of years. They've raised over $113 million US in investments, and they founder and CEO Ray Reddy was very interesting to point out one of the many reasons that they feel they were successful. And one of the ones that I thought was particularly interesting was that they said they started very small and slow. They said that we started very small, one building, and very slow, 2 cities in 2 years. And then they now can launch 10 cities across countries in 1 month. The lesson that he shared was that speed matters near the end, but not at the beginning. I thought this was particularly interesting given that a lot of startups, you hear stories about how when they get their investment come in, they needed to move quickly to advance the company and sometimes move too quickly for their own good. They sometimes fail because they are trying to deliver too much too soon.
Hassan, welcome to the Voice of Retail, our special Collision edition. How are you doing today?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
So you're in the startup zone, the beta zone. It's a big trade show floor, lots of interesting stuff. Tell us about Intuitive AI. What do you do, and what's your solution?
For sure. So at Intuitive, our vision is to create a zero-waste world. And we do that by a sensor called Oscar. And essentially what Oscar is it's the first time that an AI is instructing humans how to sort. And that's the application that we're doing. Is it helps people recycle better. Usually malls, universities, airports, like any public bins, like the public spaces, the garbage bins are considered to be absolutely contaminated and should go to landfill.
Right. So when you say contaminated, I know a little bit about recycling and sustainability. It's very precise in some ways, right? Like you can't mix paper and plastic, and or if you do, you got to separate it somewhere else, and that's what you mean by contaminated, right?
Exactly. So each of the categories, again, like it's so confusing that I couldn't give you a definitive answer because it changes state to state, province to province.
Sure. Even municipality to municipality, right?
Exactly. Down the street, you might have a different recycling rule as well. It really depends on what the hauler, the waste hauler, the one that picks it up, can process.
Right. So your solution, and we were just testing it out together, it visually identifies what was in my hand.
Yeah.
I had a Starbucks coffee cup with the lid on and with a paper brown wrapper on it. Tell me what I saw next.
Yeah, so essentially it uses computer vision, machine learning. At the back end, that's what's happening. Like it's been trained on millions and millions of images.
And what do you call that? Learning data or teaching data?
So it uses deep learning and this is essentially the garbage data set that we've built.
A garbage data set in a good way, because sometimes garbage data sets are bad way.
Usually it's like, okay, garbage in, garbage out. But whenever that's used in our offices, it's like, garbage in, data out. So like we turn the trash into extremely usable information.
So when I tried it, a little fun here. You had a nice demo here. I put the cup, and then I put my phone. Right. And what I loved is it said to the phone, "Hey, put that back in your pocket."
Exactly.
Because it identified it as a phone. And I guess the tricky part with things like coffee cups and substrates is they got to be separated. People think coffee cups can all be recycled, but they can't. And that's really what you're trying to accomplish. So where are you thinking this? And it's really a screen and then your 3 bins below it, right, to help people sort. Where do you think these are gonna wind up?
Yeah, so the thing that we produce is the sensor that attaches below the garbage, below the display,
right?
And that's essentially can attach to any garbage bin. So we don't manufacture garbage bins. We're an AI-focused company, and the use cases are malls, universities, airports, office buildings. Any company that essentially has an office space can use an Oscar.
So for retailers, I was looking at the application. Of course, my audience is mostly retailers, but it's interesting from a tech perspective, I think. But it's pretty interesting from an accountability perspective, and even for their own employees. But even if you're running a restaurant, this is a great tool. Is that how you're thinking? How is it being received in the market?
Yeah, so there's a lot of interest that we're seeing, again, like malls, universities, airports, Fortune 500 companies, quick serve restaurants, coffee chains, major retailers are seeing this as an amazing tool to change behavior. As well as the other part about it is the data piece, that as items are being thrown out, Oscar really gets smarter and tells the area or the managers of those Oscars that, okay, this is what people really like to consume in an area. What are those brands looking like? What are the consumption patterns looking like?
That's interesting.
What time of the day do they like to eat this specific thing or drink this specific thing? How full was it that they previously threw it out? And so that's the consumption pattern data set that Oscar builds. That sort of has never existed.
So we jumped right into the product.
Right.
But let's take a couple of steps back. Tell me about yourself. What's your background, and how did you come to this enterprise of yours?
Yeah, for sure. So me and my co-founder Vivek Vyas, both of us are robotics engineers. I worked down at the Tesla autopilot team, and so really worked on applying AI to cars to make them much smarter. And then there was an opportunity for us to do something more entrepreneurial than just engineering jobs. And so we decided to jump into trash because both of us come from third world countries, India and Pakistan, that are impacted by the effects from upstream here.
Right.
And so people over there live in landfills, and most of that waste is not from there. That's imported waste. And that's what we think, that at source, if you can sort it out correctly, less will go downstream.
So you're based in Toronto?
We're based in Vancouver.
Oh, you're based in Vancouver.
We started out of a program called Next AI, which is run out of University of Toronto.
Oh, fantastic. So today at Collision, you were telling me you participated in a pitch contest. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so essentially, I think about 15,000 companies apply to this pitch competitions, and they screen for months and months, and then they pick the top 60 companies, and from the 60, they pick the top 20 that go on to the semifinals. and then the finals are the 3 companies that get picked. So today we...
And the 3 companies that get picked, so there's a pitch stage in the exhibition floor, but the 3 companies that get picked, they go on the main stage,
Central
right?
stage, exactly.
So how did you do?
So we did quite well. We won. We proceeded to the next round.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So we were on to the semis, and tonight's going to be a whole practice night.
Right.
To go back at it tomorrow.
Well, listen, it was such a treat to see you and meet you. I mean, it's such an interesting application. I can see lots of use across a number of different enterprises. So I wish you much luck and success with in the short term with the pitch competition, and then moving forward.
Pleasure chatting with you, Michael.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on this special Collision edition of The Voice of Retail. If you like this podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to recommend to a friend or colleague in the retail industry. You can also ask your favorite home devices, Amazon Echo, Google Home, to play the most recent edition. I'm Michael LeBlanc, founder and president of M.E. LeBlanc & Company, and you can learn more about me on www.meleblanc.co or, of course, on LinkedIn. Join me each and every Friday as I interview some of the most interesting people in retail and cover off the most important stories within the Canadian retail industry and around the world. Until then, have a great week.